Hey, hello guys, my name is Mia Marie, and you are currently watching my Synastry Compatibility series where I go through all the 12 signs, sun signs, and how they get along. Now, as a general disclaimer, we reference so much more than just the sun sign for compatibility, but the importance of the sun and understanding someone's sun sign and accepting it and supporting it is that the sun sign describes the motives, the behaviors, the experiences that contribute to someone's sense of sanity. So we're not talking so much about what someone needs emotionally or how they flirt or what makes them great in bed, all of those very, romantic topics. We're talking about how to support someone's vitality, someone's sense of self, and someone's healing human journey. So keep in mind that this is just a gentle introduction, and you can get so much more by booking a session with me or another fantastic astrologer. Someone who is born with the sun in Leo has come to Earth to self-actualize and self-realize. All of their behaviors, their thoughts, their failures, their successes, everything is an effort to accomplish that mission. Who am I? What is my real personality? What can I do to get the applause and the attention that I deserve? They take, being the second fire sign, they take the identity that Aries has established and they create a personality that they market and then they perform it. Now, Leo always runs the risk of adjusting themselves and their tone to get the standing ovation. But what ends up happening is as they're trying on all these different faces and they're getting approval, they still don't feel like they're being seen and valued and appreciated, and so it can create some dissonance in their younger years. As they get older, they have to practice a different type of strength. Aries is physical strength, Leo is mental strength, committing to staying with oneself, developing one's skills, paying attention to their urge and desire for creativity. It's a very creative sign. It's represented by the sun, and the sun is what gives everything on earth life. It is vitality. And so their sanity is closely tied with their ability to create something or perform something or even try to children. Leos are, generally speaking, really good with children because, again, going back to that wound around joy and being appreciated, they know what a child needs innately to thrive. And so they will often be the number one supporter of a child in whatever endeavor that they choose. They show up, with the signs, or they're the coach, or in any way that they can, they make sure that that child feels the same validation that they expect in their own partnerships and in life. And in fact, it's really good for the spirit, especially if a Leo is kind of feeling down and out, for them to be around kids because it allows their inner child to come out and play. It immediately reconnects them with joy. Children remind them about the lighter side, about the importance of creativity and the importance of engaging, say like with a team. Now with fire signs, again, we're continuing the theme of leadership. So Leos often find themselves in positions of authority and power, and they tend to do pretty well because they carry this nobility, this responsibility to please the crowd, to do what's best for everybody. But Leo is different than, say, Aries because it's a fixed sign, which means that it can be quite stubborn. Once it's made up its mind, once it's committed to something, it can be kind of hard, like Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius. It can be hard for them to switch directions. They don't like unexpected information. They don't like the plans changing, especially if they're not the ones who initiated it. And they can also be fiercely loyal and protective over the people that they love, kind of like the lion being the king of the jungle. They use their energy and their vitality, of course, to have fun and throw parties and celebrate life, but they will also protect life. They're very scary. They have a hot temper once pushed. But that fixed quality can often lead Leo, I've seen, it can lead them to stay in places longer than they need to. Like, so long as they're getting some kind of recognition or approval, if they're getting something out of the transaction, then they will stay in the relationship or they'll stay in the job, even though it's not something that they really like or find fulfilling, something that is completely devoid of creativity, for example. As I briefly mentioned earlier, Leo is a socially oriented sign, which means that when it looks out into the world, it's never just thinking about itself. It's thinking about everybody else too. And they often get irked when they're around people who only think about themselves. Like, for example, I have a lot of Aries energy in my chart, and my cousin has a lot of Leo. And one of her biggest complaints to me is like, it's not all about you. And they'll feel that way towards Aries, Taurus, Gemini. They have the clan mentality of Cancer, where there's a group of people that they are quite comfortable with, that they act as a protector over, but they need groups of people to stay stimulated and to stay engaged. They're not a lone soldier. You can't. Leos don't want to be alone. Some deal breakers for Leo. So as I said, they're here to reestablish their relationship with joy, and they're a socially oriented sign. So they judge themselves by how people receive them and how they sparkle in the eyes of others. So if they've worked, say for example, really hard on a creative project and they present it to you and you dismiss them over and over again, if you're someone who's tapped out, if you're someone who is not ever giving, if you're not a cheerleader for them, then eventually they're going to get tired of being let down, because what happens is it stimulates that wound from childhood that they're not doing enough, that they are not worthy enough. Now, they're not going to think about it that way. All they're going to know is that it hurts and it doesn't feel good, and they're going to start going to somebody else for attention, because it's not just like, oh my God, you need attention. It's like, no, that attention means something, and it means something about me to me, and it validates who I am and my personality. So it's not a surface level thing for a Leo. Being acknowledged, being celebrated by someone that they value helps them heal that wound around creativity, and it allows them to show up authentically in life. Not that they should always rely on that, but they shouldn't have a partner who doesn't appreciate their creative efforts. Another thing they don't appreciate is if you're a Debbie Downer, if you're overly emotional, if you are bringing down the vibe. Like the sun every morning, they like to rise, they like to grow, and they like to see that their energy is bringing life and inspiration and motivation and activation to the people around them. So if you're unmotivated, and if you are just sitting here swirling in your head about all of these different things and you're never in the present moment, they're not going to like that either. Leos tend to do a lot, and they do it big. They think that life is one giant act, one giant performance. We're thinking like Jennifer Lopez vibes. And so having a partner who is intimidated or turned off by that type of lifestyle and tells them to play smaller or speak a little lower or to just calm down is not the right person. It's going to kill their pilot light. It's going to depress their energy, their vitality in the long run. Leos are also very prideful. They take pride in what they do, they take pride in who they are, and they take pride in their relationship. So if you're someone who goes out into the world and makes a fool of yourself, if you are a public nuisance, if you embarrass them in any way, they're going to want to create distance from you, and they may even leave the relationship because you are an extension of them in your eyes, and they expect that you will live up to their expectations. And they will also make sure that when they show up to your events, that they are a reflection of you, and they bring their best selves to the table. Sun and Scorpio, these people come into Earth with a sole motive of transforming lower desires into higher will by being a spiritual warrior. And they often do this by examining pain. Now, I heard this quote today, and it made me think of Scorpio, irregardless of gender, but it was saying that you can either play victim or play the villain. And I think this is beautiful Scorpio energy, because oftentimes they find themselves being a depository for the shittiest human experiences. It's almost like they've come to wrestle with the worst of humanity, especially as it relates to emotions. And so oftentimes they are victim, but you rarely ever hear a Scorpio characterize themselves as the victim. Instead, they take on the villain mentality. Now, I'm not saying all Scorpios are villains, but that was just something that I heard today that made me think of them. Scorpio is the second water sign, so it's socially oriented. And so it has this desire to establish a cohesive social order. It recognizes what needs to be eliminated, and it just slices it at the knees. If you've ever had a Scorpio boss, they can be cutthroat. They often have some kind of relationship with inheritance or shared resources. They often do things with a partner, and it's because they rule the house of intimacy and shared resources. At least in their younger years, Scorpio is very afraid of being ostracized or socially alienated for liking or partaking in things that would be considered taboo or atypical. But this is like something they totally get off to. Scorpio offers love in a really interesting but uncomfortable way. I mean, true to form, right? And I'll use an example. So a Scorpio hasn't seen a friend in a year, and they're so excited to reconnect with someone, and they meet them in person and they recognize that it looks like their friend has aged 10 years. And in this 1 year, they've gained 40 pounds. A Scorpio is going to say, "Oh my God, you've gained so much weight. Are you okay?" Now, society would look at that and say, that's rude and inappropriate. And in a Scorpio's mind, it's like, well, that's truthful. Are you okay? And that's the point that I want to highlight, is they nurture and nourish the soul by pointing out something that everybody can see, but no one wants to talk about because it's so uncomfortable. And then the friend goes into it and they start talking about this terrible divorce and how they were betrayed and how they're dealing with trauma. And Scorpio sits there unfazed, totally supportive. And by the end of the conversation, the friend has a new awareness of their overall mental well-being. Now, when Scorpio shares their perspective, they're not meaning to cause harm. They're essentially saying, I'm paying attention to you. And after that conversation ends, they've done something profound. They've used the truth to set their friend free from a situation that was not serving them. They nourished the soul, but not in the way that we would expect or in a way that makes us feel coddled. Scorpio does not coddle. And that's an act of healing. Scorpios are healing. They do the surgical, dirty work where they cut people open and they fix what's broken. They fix what's not working. A second example, and I swear this all builds to a point, so stick with me. A second example is that these parents are taking their young child who's a Scorpio to see the child's grandfather who's in the hospital, very ill. The child goes in, observes the condition of grandpa, has a gut instinct and feeling. The parents get back in the car and they drive the child home. On the way home, the child says, "Wow, grandpa's really sick. He's going to die soon." Mom slams on the brakes, looks back and says, "Don't say that." A taboo subject. Now, a year later, grandpa passes away. The child was right. That gut instinct, that feeling was correct. But what the child learns in that moment is that what they think, what they see, what they feel, the truth, when they speak the truth, it hurts. It hurts other people. And so what happens in their younger years is they stop talking. And you see this oftentimes with men. Women who come to me with their Scorpio partner are like, "Oh my God, they always say that Scorpios are so emotional, but he never talks. He's so quiet. He keeps to himself." It's like, yeah, this is someone who's been socially conditioned to keep their mouth shut or they're going to be ostracized. Scorpio is they don't want to be socially ostracized because they're here to be intimate with people. Taurus is mine. Scorpio represents ours. It's always in contract with somebody. It rules contracts. It's the manufacturer. It's the company. Now, the way that they love is through truth. And so they need a partner who, when they go to those extreme places, because life sees to it that Scorpio has what could be considered traumatic or extreme circumstances and conditions. So they need someone who can withstand the emotional storms that Scorpio goes through without being negatively impacted. Another example that I'll use as it relates to Scorpio characters is if a Scorpio has been going through, let's say they have a divorce, they lost their job, their health is going down the drain, and they're recognizing that their life is falling apart. And they confide in a friend and they say, "Right now, I feel like committing suicide." Now, this is heavy, but I think that this is true for Scorpios. The friend is probably going to say, "What?" No, they're not saying they're going to do it. They just say they feel like it. Most people will listen to that and say, don't do that. You need to see a psychologist. Like something is wrong with you. Someone who can be in bed with Scorpio will sit there and say, if I were you, I would feel that same way too. There is no avoidance of the truth. There is no avoidance of deep, dark emotions, of realities that all humans have to withstand. Scorpio seems to get all of the lessons, all of the tough lessons. Hence why they are the spiritual warrior. But they require in partnership somebody who isn't afraid to hear the truth, who isn't afraid to be intimate, who isn't afraid to see all sides of a person as they develop and grow, as they win, as they lose, as they soar, as they fall. Once a Scorpio knows that it's safe with you, that it can be itself with you and you won't run away or like shake in your boots, that's when the soft, loving side comes out. They are extreme cuddlers. They love cuddling, they love hugging, they love being intimate, they like spending quality time together. They are also incredibly ambitious and usually extremely successful because they have like an iron fist and a velvet glove. They know how to get shit done and they know how to place people in the right roles. They are like the master when it comes to organizing a company and making sure that things go as planned. They're on top of their shit and they make sure that you are also living up to your potential, because oftentimes if they're in business with you, if they're hiring you, you are a reflection of them and their product or their service. And so they hold you to your highest potential as well. They are also soulful lovers. Like, I think they believe in soulmates. I think that they want that type of deep, unbreakable bond. They would die for you. And more than that, they would live for you. Now, let's talk about some deal breakers. As I said, they are here to examine pain and to embrace truth. So if you are someone who will fabricate peace just to feel comfortable, you're not going to get along with a Scorpio. If you are trying to be polite and you sacrifice honesty in your intimate relationship, then they will also not trust you. If you are always polished and clean and poised, then they will be a little weary of you because what aren't you showing them? And also, if you agree all of the time with whatever they're doing or whatever they're saying, they're going to be suspicious because they understand how human psychology works. If two people are getting along perfectly all the time and someone's not being honest, someone's not showing up, someone's not participating in the relationship, they want to wrestle with you sometimes. I'm not saying that these people love a fight, but they understand what it takes to be in an intimate, committed relationship with somebody. And full transparency, Scorpio, the 8th house is the pinnacle of the arc of intimacy in astrology. And so it is programmed for partnership and it does want connectivity, but it's like a cactus. You know, there's water inside, there's emotion inside, but you got to get through the pricks to get there. Sun in Leo, Sun in Scorpio, fire, water. Again, we have this combination where we can either generate steam and it can be very hot and fiery and passionate, or we can burn or put the other person out if we're not mindful of our energetic exchange. To begin with, Leo is a fire sign. It wants to feel positive and inspired and motivated. It's driven to bring energy into life. It is like the sun. It's big, it's warm, it's welcoming. It wants to rise every single day and be seen and appreciated and validated. It's a socially oriented sign, and so it wants its partner to be right with it and to cheer it on. It needs a cheerleader, and it's just as willing to cheer you on. Scorpio is also a socially oriented sign, so there is some kind of simpatico or mutual understanding here, but it does manifest differently. Leo wants to stand on the stage of life and have everyone recognize what they're accomplishing. Scorpio is also good at socializing, but it really wants to deeply become a part of somebody else. And it's a water sign, so it prizes like emotional connectivity, talks about spirituality, occult theories, secrets, traumas. It's kind of like the darker corner of the psyche. These two people are in turn different as it relates to the sun sign. Leo is extroverted. It wakes up in the morning. It's like, shit, I got to get moving because my pilot light went out while I was sleeping. And so they move their body to generate energy. a Scorpio wakes up fully charged, and the moment it leaves the house, it's running on a battery. And so you see Scorpio here, Leo here, and throughout the day they have that sweet spot, and then they, again, separate ways, just exclusively looking at the sun sign. And so what you'll find is like your self-care Sunday routine looks a little bit differently. Leo might need a little bit more activity in order to kind of acquire the energy that Scorpio has just by sleeping. Now, one of the problem areas, or I guess no, one of the stronger areas is when Scorpio likes you, it is fully focused on you. He or she will tell you everything that you need to hear. They will not create a flicker of doubt in your mind that you are the apple of their eye. It's almost like they are obsessed with you. There is this possessiveness and jealous factor to it. And I don't want to, those aren't the best expressions of human behavior, but they're also not completely foreign. And we all fall prey to those emotions at one point in time. It just so happens that Scorpio finds itself feeling that way more frequently, similar to Taurus. And so, Leo will really appreciate the loyalty. Leo will appreciate that Scorpio is so invested and interested in them, but they may begin to feel a little bit uncomfortable with the heaviness of the energy. Leo might call Scorpio a wet blanket because Leo is wanting to say hi to life. It's wanting to say yes and just see where life takes them and be a little bit more free and celebratory. Leo is here to learn how to celebrate life and itself. And Scorpio has been traumatized by life. And so it has nothing but experiences that exist to prove to Scorpio that there's more to people than meets the eye. So they're taking crash courses in completely different things. But on the surface level, Leo's going to look at Scorpio and be like, dude, you're way too heavy. You're way too deep. Like, why don't you change your perspective? Be lighter, be better. And Scorpio is like, do you not understand the stories that I've shared with you? Do you not get my emotional depth? Have you never gone through something like this? And so there can be that friction of just lacking the simple awareness that you guys have two completely different stories. And sometimes it's not so much your perspective, but sometimes it's the sequence of events that have happened repeatedly over and over again to establish and solidify a perspective. These two are also fixed signs, which means that they're stubborn. And so when they are arguing, it will feel like they're kind of going up against an opponent, someone who is equally as strong, a fairly good match for them, but an irritating match. Scorpio may find that, Leo lacks depth and will kind of put on a specific mask or a specific personality just to create a specific vibe. And sometimes a Scorpio wishes that that Leo could be a little bit more real and truthful and open to exploring the shadier side of life and helping them make sense of it. I would also imagine that this romantically pins out pretty well. You would have to look specifically at your Mars and your Venus signs to kind of seal the deal. But I can see this working out well because Leo loves to put on a show. It's like, watch me, watch me. And Scorpio will just devour every piece of Leo in the most delicious way. And Leo will love the attention being fully on them and just being gobbled up by this super emotionally available, mysterious, tormented type of soul. And so, in that particular area, I don't see there being a problem, but I do see real issues manifesting where Leo wants to shine and feel good, and Scorpio just has a hard time with it, and in turn becomes intimidated by or afraid of or uncomfortable with Leo's brightness, Leo's optimism and positivity. And in turn comes the jealousy, the wanting to keep Leo to itself, wanting to kidnap Leo and, keep it hidden behind closed doors. They don't do this intentionally. It's more so not a response to Leo, but the ability to shine, the ability to be optimistic, the ability to be free, the ability to celebrate is something that Scorpio is like, that's more so what the response is. I think I could see this going either way. Either you guys become a power couple that are just so into each other, or you guys are kind of like secret playmates because in order to make this relationship work long-term, there would have to be multiple other factors, right? And a willingness to be aware of those factors and work with them. But you enjoy each other. I mean, these two will enjoy each other romantically, intimately, as they're flirting. There is sexual tension between the two, which is represented by the square aspect. A lot of people don't like to hear like squares and oppositions, but that's how, that's how you do it. You got to have a little friction to make the magic. And so, yeah, that's the way that I see it happening. Either you guys are insanely in love with each other and there is this passion that will never die. You fall in love with each other over and over again. Leo is willing to do some footwork and some dark waters, and Scorpio is open to the idea of reprogramming its perspective for the sake of Leo. I don't know if I stand by that language, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. There is compromise there. This is one of those relationships where you will have to compromise and meet in the middle. Or you guys are just, playmates on your play dates. So this is immediately what comes to my mind. Of course, there are over 2,000 more configurations that will, drive home specific make or break, specifically the moon. But if you would like to learn more or work with me, you can find me at wellandrising.com/services. Toodles.